Let's mock it up. We got Pete Prisco and Brady Quinn. I'm Chris Hassel, and let's welcome in the fourth member of our segment, Ryan Wilson, who has been our mock man on CBSSports.com the entire season. You got Burrow again, number 1 to Cincinnati. You got Tua, number 5 to the Dolphins. So let's go somewhere else here. The Panthers have a real shakeup here. Matt Rhule coming in as the new head coach. He has a new offensive coordinator in Joe Brady. Luke Kuechly retiring. How does their plan change going into the draft with all this movement?
Chris, my mock draft came out before all this stuff started happening with Joe Brady and obviously Luke Kuechly. I had them taking Tristan Wirfs, your guy, the right tackle out of Iowa. He feels a need. We know Pete and Brady both love offensive linemen. And no matter who the quarterback is, I think bolstering the offensive line makes some sense there. Things get interesting, though. We know Kuechly's retired. Would they take a linebacker that high? That's a huge question mark. Would they take a quarterback that high? I know Pete thinks Cam's coming back, and I think if Cam's healthy, that makes sense. But we also know Joe Brady's there, and Joe Brady just played with some guy named Joe Burrow, and you have to do a lot of mental gymnastics. But would the Panthers be willing to sell the house to move up to number 1 to get Joe Burrow? And let me ask you guys this. If you were Joe Brady and Matt Rhule, would you trade the number 7 pick, the 38th and 69th picks, and then 2 first-rounders in 21 and then another one in 2022?
Hell no.
To get Joe Burrow?
Hell no. Stop it. What are you're just going to shut down the franchise too? I mean, you can't do that.
Joe Burrow's good. I don't know if I'm giving up everything like that because there's not going to be much for him to work with.
What if it was Trevor Lawrence?
Maybe I think. But the thing with Trevor Lawrence, too, is he's a hometown product, so there's a little bit more
but
of
even
that to sell.
You're talking about the 7?
But the other side of this, though,
let's get Ryan to say it one more time.
The other side of it is, we'll get that in a second, is what means Cincinnati's going to get, pass on the chance to take Joe Burrow.
If they offered him that, they would. They'd give him away.
Yeah. What was that again, Ryan?
Go ahead, read it again, Ryan.
I didn't think that would get you that fired up, guys. So it's funny you say the Bengals wouldn't be involved because I wrote something about this 2 weeks ago, just teams that might be interested in trading up and what it would cost. And I put it on Twitter today just because of the Joe Brady news. And I spent 2 hours getting assaulted from Bengals fans saying, please quit pushing this narrative. This is not going to happen. Joe Brady is coming to Cincinnati. And I think that's exactly right.
Joe Burrow,
I thought I'd just
right?
put it out there just in case. Joe Burrow, sorry.
Wait, what was your 7? Go ahead. The 7th
overall.
Okay.
38.
38. What's your deal? Give me the deal again. I want to hear.
Number 7, and the second round pick is number 38. The third round pick is number 69. First rounder in 2021. First rounder in 2022 to go from 7 to go to number 1. If you're Paul Brown or if you're Mike Brown, are you taking that?
So that's 3 first-rounders.
I think Paul Brown in his grave might even take that deal.
Yeah, yes, right now, right away.
Yeah, you take that because of, again, what you're getting in exchange for it. But look, again, it's not going to happen because I can't see Cincinnati trading out that spot, even for that haul, because if they pass up on Joe Burrow and he turns out to be, he's a hometown kid. He grew up in Athens, Ohio. They call him the Athens Assassin for a reason. They might as well start just negotiating the contract right now if the NFL is going to let them and just get this thing started with Joe Burrow and not even entertain trading out of that spot. So I think it's a done deal. I think the real question comes down to you, Ryan, is who's the best linebacker, middle linebacker? Not Isaiah Simmons. He's more of that hybrid player. Because now with the loss of Kuechly, you wonder if maybe they're going to look to supplement that or if that would change maybe how you look at the spot instead of them taking an offensive lineman like Wirfs.
No, that's right, Brady. Isaiah Simmons is sort of a different type of player, but it's sort of bad news for the Panthers that Dylan Moses decided to return to Alabama. He tore the ACL in August, but he was a first-round talent coming into the season. People considered him a first-round talent, even though he obviously didn't play in 2019. And he's someone you probably wouldn't take at 7, but maybe trade down to the middle of the round and get. Now, if you're at 15, you might fall in love with someone like Kenneth Murray, the linebacker out of Oklahoma. Different type of player than Dylan Moses, who's a little bigger, but very sideline-to-sideline guy, very physical, can help in the run game. Didn't do a lot in dropping into coverage, but he can do that. And maybe you can even circle back at the top of round 2 with that 38th pick if you don't send it to Cincinnati and get Kenneth Murray there. But this year is sort of thin at inside linebacker, and it's going to have to be a linebackers by committee approach. I just don't know how you go about doing it, given now that Luke Kuechly obviously is retired, and you have a lot of other holes to fill.
If you watch the college football playoff, you're pretty well prepped for at least the first round of the NFL draft. In your latest mock, I counted 8 of the top 20 from playoff teams, and all these guys in the first round from one game, including Isaiah Simmons there, listed as a linebacker at number 4 out of Clemson to the Giants, but he's a guy who can play about 3 different positions. He's a hybrid, Ryan.
Yeah, he's so much fun to watch. And he flashed last year when you were watching Clemson play with those 3 first-rounders along the defensive line, and you made a note, okay, I got to watch this guy next year. And then he played much better than I think most people expected. Like you said, Chris, you can line him up at linebacker. He can play safety. He can play in the slot. He can blitz off the edge. And if you're the Giants, who have needs all over that defense, they got rid of Janoris Jenkins. They traded some edge rushers before the season. They need help in the middle of the defense. I think he makes some sense at 4. I mean, you could argue that they should take an offensive tackle to help Daniel Jones, and I get that. But if Isaiah Simmons is sitting there and seeing what he's done this season, I don't know why you wouldn't consider it long and hard.
Ryan, you and I have talked about this in the past. I actually feel like there's a chance he could go as high as 3. If you look at Matt Patricia and what the New England defensive coordinators love is its versatility, a player who can play a bunch of different positions. We go back to the years of the Jamie Collins, the Kyle Van Noy, etc. Isaiah Simmons fits into that role. He fits into it as a off-the-ball linebacker. He blitzes well. He can play the nickel position. He's even at times played a deep safety position as well. At 6'4", 230, he can do all of that. So I think his ceiling could actually be maybe 3, given his versatility and given the fit within Matt Patricia's system. But that's what I think it's going to come down to for Isaiah Simmons is system fit. A team could draft him, but if they just kind of stick him in one spot and they don't move him around and let him be really the focus of that defense, I think they're selling themselves short, and they're not really going to be able to maximize his potential as a player.
If you pick Simmons over Derek Brown, you're making a major mistake. And I think Simmons
Derek Brown is a heck of a player. I get it.
But if you're sitting there, you got to take him. I think Derek Brown's the guy you got to take. And if you're the Giants, you better get offensive line help. I think they have major issues up front. They got to address that. There's a lot of good offensive linemen. And we talk about it the entire season, Brady, how the linemen are going to go early and often in this draft.
Can we give Ryan a hard time, though, about how after the national championship game, I believe he had Isaiah Simmons going at 12. They jumped him all the way up to the top 5 after that performance.
Got to change it. He does one every week.
This happened overnight, though. This was over literally the course of, 12 hours?
Yeah. I knew what was going to be coming my way if I put him at number 12 after what happened in the championship game. So,
credit.
Moved him up, didn't ask questions.
Made the adjustment, even on the losing side of things. Let's make a draft comparison here, Ryan. A couple of secondary players from teams in the SEC. Grant Delpit, safety out of LSU. You have him going number 17 to the Cowboys. And then Bama quarterback Xavier McKinney, number 21 to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I'll let Brady talk about Grant Delpit because we talked about it on the Pick 6 podcast. I know he has some thoughts on him, but I just rewatched the LSU-Alabama game and focused on Xavier McKinney, who I actually like a little more than Delpit this season. He's a lot more physical. He's a much better tackler. And in that LSU game, he spent probably half his snaps, maybe more, within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. So he does a lot of things. He's very versatile. He can blitz off the edge. He can blitz up the middle. And he's a playmaker on the back end when you need him there. Delpit didn't have a great season. He struggled with ankle injuries, and I know Brady was not blown away by his 2019 tape.
No, and I think that's the thing. If you're drafting Grant Delpit, which Delpit are you getting, the 2018 or the 2019? Didn't have quite as good of a season, even though he played fairly well in the national championship game. I just think overall, one of the things that stood out for me, and I just comparing these two players, Xavier McKinney was better this season, but also better in coverage. And I think that's one of the things that I really took away from watching the film this year. But again, you go back to 2 years ago, Delpit was much more productive as far as getting interceptions and so forth, and was better in coverage that year. So you got to ask yourself, what was the deal with the inconsistencies this past season? Was it the ankle injuries, or was it maybe he was just buying a little bit too much into his own stock?
Maybe he was saving himself for the National Football League a little bit. No, I'm kidding. I think McKinney is the better player right now. He played better than Delpit this year, and everybody was on Delpit going in. Remember, there was talk, top 10 pick, top 5 pick maybe for Delpit. He didn't play to that at all. If you rated the players in that LSU secondary, where would he rate?
I'd say he probably would have, overall looking at the season. It's hard because you have a bad taste in your mouth after Willie Fulton played in the national championship game.
But he's a better player.
Stingley was number 1. Fulton was probably better. And then you're looking at maybe Delpit somewhere there, Stevens somewhere in there.
Yeah. So, I mean, he not a top 10 pick anymore, I don't think.
There are 7 Alabama players in Ryan Wilson's first round mock. Ryan, by the way, when do you start going to the second and third round and all the way through? When is that going to start?
Let's keep going, Chris. I don't want anyone to hear.
Okay, Alabama.
Soon.
7 players in the first round. Who jumps off the screen at you in your latest mock?
Well, Tua is right up there, and we'll talk about him. You go down that list, and you like everyone for different reasons. Jedrick Wills had a huge season. surpassed Alex Leatherwood in terms of the best offensive lineman on that team. Leatherwood actually returned to Alabama for next season. We know about Jerry Jeudy, wasn't quite as dynamic this year in terms of the stats, but we know he can play. I like Trevon Diggs a lot. He had a tough game against LSU, but everyone has a tough game against LSU. He's big, he's fast, he's strong. I've had him going to the Vikings in previous mock drafts, and we know that Pete talked about Xavier Rhodes struggling this season. He's a guy that seems like a good fit there. We know Mike Zimmer loves those big, fast, strong cornerbacks, so that's someone to keep an eye on during the pre-draft process. And Henry Ruggs, there's conversations he'll run a 4.3 at the combine, maybe faster, so I'm looking forward to that too.
Ryan, you've got Lewis going number 22, the edge player out of Alabama, to the Bills. They have a really big need at wide receiver. I know in some of your other mocks you've actually had them taking a wide receiver. What made you have a change of heart on this one?
Well, you guys have talked about this in previous shows. There are so many wide receivers in this draft class. There aren't a lot of edge rushers, and the Bills do need to stock up on edge rushers. That defense is really good this year, but you can never have enough guys rushing off the edge. We don't know about Tom Brady, but typically he plays in the the AFC East, so you want to get after him. And I feel like you can circle back in the second and third rounds. And maybe in the second round, I think they pick 54th. Pete's guy, Brandon Ayuk, might be there. He might already be gone, but there are a ton of guys you get. Tyler Johnson out of Minnesota, Michael Pittman, who had an awesome season at USC this year, Brian Edwards, who's a Mack truck at South Carolina. There's so many players you can get in the second and third round that can give you what you need in terms of a tall target for Josh Allen. And at 22 there, you can get an edge rusher to help that defense.
Might have been a Freudian slip there from Ryan Wilson saying Tom Brady in the NFC East. We'll see. How about Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver, this time taken first over CeeDee Lamb? I know those two kind of, 1A, 1B, and they can kind of flip-flop back and forth. Why did you decide to have Jeudy over Lamb in this draft?
I do like CeeDee Lamb better. Partly, Chris, as Pete will point out, that I do one of these every week, so you mix it up a little bit. But I think he fits what the Jets want. Obviously, Jerry Jeudy's a fantastic playmaker. He's great in small areas, probably the best route runner in this draft class. The numbers weren't there this year like they were in 2018, but he also was playing with Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith and Henry Ruggs, so you understand why some of that production went elsewhere. But when he's on, he is on. And Sam Darnold, I feel like, won't be seeing ghosts if Jerry Jeudy's out there running routes. I think the biggest issue for the Jets is Adam Gase and how he's going to make this team better, because we really haven't seen that wherever Adam Gase has landed as a head coach. We want to see Sam Darnold take a step forward, and Jerry Jeudy, I think, will help do that.
Well, one of the biggest differences and the reason why this mock draft, and you see the change, is Isaiah Simmons. He had Simmons at 12. He vaulted him up to 4. CeeDee Lamb ended up being the guy losing out in that whole battle. He ends up sliding all the way from where he had him taken in the top 10 now to be now 12. So he just lost out on a few million. Pete, I can tell you, it doesn't feel good when you're dropping the draft like that, especially in Ryan. I know, trust me, I know. It doesn't feel good to be seeing that. And unfortunately, I don't know if it'll work out that way, but I think you can see the need for sure for the Raiders bringing in a big-time wide receiver like CeeDee Lamb. And again, the Jets need one too. It just comes down to the preference of which one of these guys they see. Who do you like best?
And Robbie Anderson's also an unrestricted free agent for the Jets, so he's probably not coming back either. The Jets need help at wide receiver. Which one do I like better? I like Jeudy better.
We're continuing our mock draft with Ryan Wilson, who joins us here on CBS Sports HQ with Pete Prisco and Brady Quinn. I'm Chris Hassel. Ryan, you got Tua Tagovailoa at number 5 to the Miami Dolphins once again. Now, there's a report that he might be able to work out before the NFL draft. Now, my question is, why? I mean, I feel like if he just doesn't do anything, that he's not going to fall out of the top 10. Could he do more damage than help his cause?
Yeah, that'll be interesting, Chris. Lee Steinberg, his agent, told AL.com on Tuesday that the plan is to have Tua work out possibly at the March 24th Alabama Pro Day for 40 minutes, throw 60 to 80 passes. And if that doesn't work out, if he's not quite ready then, he'll do it sometime in April before the draft, in late April. And that seems incredibly ambitious given the timeline of this injury. It was November 16th that he got hurt. He had the hip surgery a few days later. And the expectation was 6 to 8 month recovery, a full recovery. But according to Steinberg, the doctors say everything is going quite well. And Steinberg also mentioned that he wanted full transparency with NFL teams, so maybe that plays a part with it. But I think you're on to something in terms of does the bad outweigh the good in terms of doing that. I'm sure Tua wants to do it, get out there and show he can play. But I feel like if you sort of just go through this process, let the NFL teams go through their medicals, you're probably still a top 15 pick. But ultimately, it sounds like he's going to throw, and he hopes to do it in a few months.
This is incredibly aggressive, and I think what it tells you is they know how real and how big of a concern this injury is, and they want to put and cast that aside in any of these general managers or head coaches' minds as far as where he's going to be at and if he'll be the same player if they were indeed to draft him, because they understand what's on the line, millions and millions of dollars. So I think that's one of the reasons why they're being so ambitious and trying to, expedite this whole process with his recovery and then try to get him on the field to throw. Now, is there a risk there? Sure. But I think the risk really is more of if they put him in a scenario where they let any of those coaches come out and they try to do some sort of drill where he's got to be reactive to it. I think as long as they allow him to just throw from the pocket, do some drops from the gun, and let him be in a controlled environment, I don't know that it's going to harm him, and I think it probably would alleviate some coaches, some general managers' minds as far as where he's at so far and just seeing him throw and release the football.
But does that alleviate concerns about taking a shot on the hip? I mean, you know this injury better than me. I mean, you know anybody that's had that major hip injury?
Well, first off, he didn't take a shot on the hit in general.
No, I know.
It's the way he fell.
I get it.
And so, of course, it's not going to alleviate that.
Is there concerns of it happening again if you take a shot, fall?
Well, it's twofold. Yeah, obviously there's a concern of it being hurt again, but there's also a concern of it being degenerative.
Right.
How long are you going to be able to get him at peak Tua throughout the course of his career? And that's what you're questioning before you make this investment. So those questions are still going to be out there. I think the biggest question really becomes is how far along is he in the process? Because if you do spend a top 10 pick on him, or let's say the Dolphins take him at 5, the anticipation is that he's going to probably play his rookie season. That's what we've seen from a lot of first-round quarterbacks now. And so, and you shake your head, but that's what they're asking themselves. Like, are they
like playing him?
Hold
early.
on for a second. Are they going to lose a year in drafting him at that point in time and paying him that much money to have him redshirt and then wait till the following year to play him? That's what you're trying to figure out. How far along in this process is he in recovering?
Well, if I'm the Miami Dolphins and I want a quarterback for the long term, and I think he's going to be okay in a year, I'm drafting him, and I might not play him. I might play Ryan Fitzpatrick as my quarterback. I'm okay with that. And I'm a big believer in playing the young kid as quickly as you can. But if this kid has medical issues, you rest him and get him right for the next year.
But that doesn't answer the question that you asked. If it's degenerative or this is still an issue 2 years from now.
You got a major problem on your hands.
So Tua, the second quarterback to go in Ryan Wilson's mock draft. Of course, it's Burrow, number 1 of the Bengals, as it has been the last couple of months. But 4 quarterbacks in the first round total. Number 3, Justin Herbert, 13th overall to the Indianapolis Colts.
Big week for him this week, Chris, at the Senior Bowl. He's got to prove a lot of people wrong. A lot of people doubted him, myself included. I thought he was a second-round pick based on the way he played in 2019. And Brady and I have talked about this a bunch. He's been wildly inconsistent in terms of making the easy throws that he needs to make. He has everything physically that you want in a franchise quarterback. And I compare him to Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is the high water mark, and Justin Herbert's sort of the middle-of-the-road guy who hasn't lived up to those expectations. So next week in Mobile, he can have a great week, impress a lot of people. Pete knows last year when we were there, Daniel Jones, no one was really talking him up. After the Senior Bowl, teams liked him a lot to the point where the Giants obviously took him at 6 overall. So I think he makes some sense in Indianapolis if they're not sold on Jacoby Brissett. If they want to have a backup plan, Brissett has 1 more year left on his deal. And if they fall in love with him next week, that could make some sense in the middle of the first round.
Now, there was somebody at the Senior Bowl who was talking up Daniel Jones. You might remember that. Me.
Hey, Ryan, don't worry. Pete will never pass up an opportunity to compliment himself.
He'll be the first one to tell you. I did.
Well, he wasn't. You were actually the first one to tell everyone that.
No, well,
Pete's arms are longer. He'd be able to pat himself on the back.
I've had so many wrong that when I get one right, I like to believe I'm okay with that.
Let's talk about this for a second, because it could make a lot of sense as far as the fit. Frank Reich, a former quarterback, is great with quarterbacks. I think we've seen that over the time. His time with the Colts. But even before that. So it could make some sense just for the development standpoint of Justin Herbert, because even though he's played a lot of football at Oregon, he still looks to me to be a little bit raw in regards to playing the position. He reminds me a little bit of Ryan Tannehill. When Ryan Tannehill came out of Texas A&M and the Dolphins took him in the first round, the fortunate thing for Tannehill was it was the same offense his first couple of years with the Dolphins because Mike Sherman came as their OC. That was who he had with Texas A&M. So is Justin Herbert going to have that same situation? Of course not. And so there will be a learning curve there, and there's going to be a little bit of a progression for him or a maturation process where it may take him some time to really feel and play the way we're seeing Ryan Tannehill play now for the Tennessee Titans.
There have been some mock drafts from Ryan Wilson where there's only 2 quarterbacks in the first round, with Herbert being left out and Jordan Love being left out. But Jordan Love you have going in the first round to the New England Patriots at number 23 as Tom Brady's eventual successor.
Jordan Love needs to have a big week next week, too, probably even bigger than Justin Herbert. Terrible season. There's no other way to put it at Utah State. There are a lot of reasons for it. The offense changed. The playmakers left, new coach. But he just didn't play well. But he is incredibly gifted. And he gives you hints of Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. And if that excites you, he's a guy you could think about. Again, he could sit at New England behind Tom Brady or maybe Jarrett Stidham if Tom Brady isn't there. And you bring him in 2 or 3 years and maybe have a franchise guy down the road.
Jordan Love reminds me of Josh Allen, and not necessarily as a comp, but as far as how you're going to have to evaluate him. He's got the prototypical size. He's athletic, and he can make some special plays. To Ryan's point, we didn't see it a whole lot this year, Pete. There was more bad than good, but this guy's a diamond in the rough. And if someone gets their hands on him, they put him in the right system, they can help develop him. I do believe he can be special, but you know how it is. It's all about situation and circumstance. And it's so few times we actually see quarterbacks fall into that right situation.
Is he better than Jacoby Brissett was when he was in New England and played with the Colts? That's the question.
He's not coming into this situation.
No, I know.
And so that's what I'm saying. He needs some development. He needs some time to really grow and improve some technical
things. I think Herbert is more like Josh Allen. I think the bigger, stronger guy can move around a little bit inaccurate at times, raw.
Well, his stats wouldn't show that. His stats were much better than Allen's.
Well, yeah. Well, he played at Oregon. The other guy played with bouncers and bartenders at Wyoming. Big difference.
Full mock draft from Ryan Wilson, first round on CBSSports.com. The 2nd through 7th round coming soon, I'm sure. Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.